Okay, thank you so much for the great intro. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with such a good audience full of creators, dreamers. I know that this is the time of the day, almost 4:20 right now, where your body, needs a chai, and your mind is basically looking for a break. And I know that the discussions are happening from the morning, but believe me, for the great discussion, great ideas, it doesn't follow any schedule. So, to begin with, right, like before I basically start with the panel, would like to actually ask few questions to the audience. Not very complex, very simple. You know that, the real-time digital payments are the backbone of any country. I wanted to ask, which country does the highest number of real-time digital payment in the world? India. Any guess what is the number? 200 billion in the volume is what we are doing. I used to work for a company called Visa. I was chief security architect over there before I started Pig Local. At that time, we used to talk about the TPS of 10,000, 20,000. We used to have a mug number, which is what is the maximum capacity that a Visa network can take. Believe me, our country and NPCI has developed something much bigger than that. In 2016, UPI used to have a volume of 1 million. 2024, we had almost 165 billion. This year, the plan is to reach 200 plus, and the idea is to go 1 billion a day. So big round of applause, what India can achieve. Second question, which country does 60% of or supplies 60% of vaccines to the world and 40% of generic medicines to the world? India. And that's the reason we call as a pharmacy of the world, right? The third one, which country gives the most or is the backbone for all the global tech? India. We do almost $300 billion of IT services in India. So the question here is, that why not AI? Right, and this is the topic I wanted to discuss with our panelists right now here. See, we are living in a moment when, for example, I still code, by the way, but the machines are not only for the code, they are doing the job that we thought only humans can do. But now they are replacing, right? So what at this particular moment, what is our story, right? So we'd like to start with you, Rahul. I know that you are, and thank you, for having a great discussion before this meeting. Great to see that, you are leading one of the most ambitious project of leading the AI ML infrastructure of India and supporting so many startups and whatnot. In your view, what is that most important thing that India has to build now in order to become a global leader into AI?
Thanks for the team for inviting me, and thanks for this wonderful question. Just to give some context, I run an incubator called MATH, Math, Machine Learning, Artificial Intelligence Technology Hub, and we are supported by Government of India, Government of Telangana, and we are within T-Hub in Hyderabad. We support close to 900 startups across India. More than 100 plus startups are within our premises. We have a 50,000 SFT office there, 100 plus startups are incubated with us. 500 plus of those startup employees work from the same premises. And that's what I was telling everyone in the panel before this discussion, that I have not seen personally myself this kind of setup anywhere in the world. So that gives a lot of hope and, for the India and the future that we are building. Now, coming back to the question, what kind of things that India from a government side or as a country should build, there are a couple of areas that we are focusing on, and also in line with the central government, state government, and all the governments. One is that in terms of the GPU infrastructure. So there's a strong push towards that, and I think people also might have read in different newspapers and everywhere we are getting a lot of funds also as a center to procure our own GPUs, where we are extending those support to the startups. And just to give some context, on a monthly basis, right now we are extending $1 million worth of free cloud trades to the startup. So apart from that, second area that we are working and also from the policymakers point, there is a big push is in terms of the data infrastructure. So we are trying to, today in India is the hub of data. When you're talking about pharma, healthcare, be it manpower, humans, like traffic, space data, any kind of data, we are the hub of data. But the thing is that the data is highly unstructured today. So that is an area where we are working, and also there are different agencies and bodies which are working to make that data infrastructure for the startups. So when they are building the AI, it becomes more like a smarter AI solutions and the systems, and the policies around that data. So be it data privacy, data security, those kind of areas, the policies, you will see like in this year itself, there will be some notification gadgets which will get published from the government side, and that is an area where we are working with different bodies to work on this policy, like how we can secure the data. Apart from the infrastructure, the GPU infrastructure and the data, the third area where there is a lot of push is the fund that we are allocating for supporting the startups. So AI startups, we need that, it requires a lot of money. And today, like just last month, we announced 100 crore fund for AI startups. So this is just a small start. I know like many people might say, like people who are working in Valley, 100 crore is nothing, but that's where we are starting right now, and we are hoping that we are trying to pull a lot of VCs, investors from across the world to come in India, work with our startups, be it Bangalore, be it Hyderabad, any of the cities, to support our startups so that they can build in India. Because another problem what we are facing today, like 20 years back, 30 years back, we were talking about brain drain. Now we are seeing startup drain. So the moment any of the AI startups starts making some revenue, what we are seeing is that in general, the context is that 70% of the AI startups revenue comes from outside India, because that's where the market is, right? So moment they start making some revenue, like they have crossed $100,000 or $200,000, they are, because of the circumstances, they are pushed by the customer or the investor, that they end up starting one of the satellite office or their parent headquarter in US, UK, Australia, or any of these places, and these countries are offering them different grants. You have your IP here, even if you're operating from India, and that's where they are attracting the startups. So that is a big challenge for us as a country, and that is where we are trying to engage the startups so that they can keep the IP in India, so that when we are building in India, it should be built for India by Indians. So that is a big challenge. I will not say that we will be able to solve it overnight, but that is an area where we are working so that we can give sufficient support to the startup, where they can start getting the customers from India, and they can keep the IP within India, and also the data and all those things within the country. So these are major, like top 3 areas. Apart from that, there are many other aspects we are working in terms of skilling, education and all, because skilling is again a big gap in AI and those areas. But I will just summarize in these 3 top areas.
Thank you. So very interesting, by the way, Rahul, just one follow-up question, and I will just read it over there very quickly. See, because when I started coding, right, way back, the very important thing was to have an access to the laptop. That was my struggle during that time. Even right now, the struggle for any good AI engineer is sometimes to get this infrastructure. And great to see that you guys are helping in that particular way. Just from a capacity perspective, how much GPUs specifically, you guys have, or what is our capacity around it? If you can just throw some numbers around it.
See, there are a lot of centers across India, like CDAC centers and IITs, and where
Yeah.
you will find the GPUs. Even we have procured a couple of GPUs which were A100s. Challenge is that every 6 months, because of the market forces, they are getting upgraded.
Okay.
Right, so we are, again, that is a challenge that we are fighting. Like a year back, when you procured the GPUs, they are like each DGX box was coming 1.6 crore. I'm just giving the context, right? Right now, if I go, it is like 4.3 crore. So the cost has increased 3x. So that is also a different channel. But yeah, we have sufficient number of hardware GPUs with us, which are getting utilized. Another thing that we are doing in terms of capacity is that we created a marketplace of the big players, like
Okay.
be it Amazon, be it Microsoft, Google, GCP, Nvidia, and all these guys are contributing their credits to us. From India, we have Yota, right? We also have local players whom you are bringing on board, like E2E or Pi Data Center, and these are the local players like who are coming. And so we are creating that infrastructure in the marketplace where instead of we building on our own, which we are trying to build to the fund that we got from government and all, but we are also creating that ecosystem so that when the startups are coming, at least they can get as much as possible from this ecosystem. So that is the approach we are taking at this point.
Sure. Thank you so much. Moving on to the next thing, getting into the investor's lens. Anup, like, I'm a founder, understand, like, most of the time the pressure that what we get from the VCs, okay, mainly around, like, the revenue model. When you invest into the deep tech, right, one of the thing is always around is about the patience, right? Because even if, let's say, I wanted to start something in the deep tech, creating manufacturing GPUs, one particular, like, design, when it goes to for the fab, if something goes wrong, 20 million is gone, right? So that is the nature, like, nature of the things that what we are in. But if we really want to become a superpower, we need to start manufacturing GPUs and doing a deep tech from India. Are the VC world ready for that particular patience, right? Like, I just basically wanted your view on that.
Sure. Thanks a lot for having me here in the panel as well. I think the question is interesting. It's a question about whether VC's risk appetite aligns with the deep tech ambitions of a country as such, right? To that extent, and whether the time horizons match. Today, most of the funds here in the country are not necessary. And when you look at the early stage ecosystem, they're typically 10-year funds with 2-year extensions, so roughly about a 12-year horizon. Average holding periods in each of these funds for an investment would be roughly 8.5 years. So to answer the question whether are we ready, potentially not, because if you're truly investing into deep tech, if you give yourself 4 to 5 years for commercialization of a very, very core tech, and then looking to scale, can the VC who came in the seed stages, pre-seed stages, look at a good exit in the 8th year? Potentially not, right? So what's the need of the hour, right? The need of the hour is a different set of potential investors who are focused on building this risk appetite, potentially being able to hold longer, potentially also subsidized with the government interventions from capital allocations, etc., which can go towards them, which can actually bridge this early stage risk a lot more, almost close to a MVP or a pre-commercialization stage where the larger funds can come in and take that entire risk of commercialization and scalability. I think today, are we ready for it? I think fundamentally yes, because the number of managers that we have today in the country, the fund managers, I think India is quite deep enough for the talent base that we have. But the kind of capital which is coming in is still chasing shorter term cycles. In fact, today when we go out and raise funds, we always have a 3-year fund cycle. Most of the large funds in the country have 3-year fund cycles to go out and raise the next fund, right? While the initial fund would have got deployed, we go out in the 4th year and say we want to raise another $100 million or $200 million or $300 million. The question which comes back to us from these same investors is, hey, when are you going to give me back my capital? So their patience is only 3 years. We at least are patient for 8 years, right? So it's a funnel which cycles from the mindset of the end investors who put money into the funds to sort of bring this ecosystem out. Let's look at successful ecosystems like the Valley, right? Where did they get their patience from? They got their patience from large endowments, college endowments, pension funds, where time horizons over there are 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, right? They are not in it for the quick buck. They're not coming out of any of these funds and putting unnecessary pressures on monetization, return of capital over there on the fund managers. If the profile and as and when the profile of these mature investors turn towards India, I think we will be far and more ready because we have a talent base, we have good fund managers, we just need the right form of capital to come in to accelerate this ecosystem.
Thank you so much for all the insights. Moving on. Abhishek, you are actually leading some of the foundational models from India. You're creating those, right? We were just speaking about in a fintech use cases, there are use cases where we need to go very deeper into and understand the media or the publishing which is happening into the local languages and whatnot, right? Please, tell us more about that. Why India needs, its own models rather than depending upon the global models as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. So I always talk about this particular bit that actually it's not about building a model. To be very frank, the race is towards something which is much bigger, much beyond what's happening right now, and that is AGI, or even going beyond that, which is super intelligence. Ultimately, we humans, I think we are done with our own intelligence. The pace of science is not as high as what used to be a couple of decades back. And what we feel is that I think AI can actually push the frontiers of science, push the frontiers of medicine, and a lot more outside what we could do as of now. That is why we don't see a lot of Einsteins coming from our generation, most probably. So the race is towards that. So what I personally feel is that LLM is step number 1 to figure out how we ultimately build intelligence. Step number 2 might be something else. Step number 3 might be something else. And maybe we will reach AGI or ASI in step number 10 or 20. Nobody knows on this planet, nobody knows about that particular bit. But it's just that initial step to understand what intelligence is, try to figure out how intelligence is built, and no matter how many research papers you read, there are a lot of research-oriented companies in India. I go to a lot of these events, paper reading sessions, etc. But paper reading is just one bit. You get very partial information out of it. Executing those things and then learning from your failures is totally another thing. So building a large language model is basically figuring out failures, taking those failures, converting them into success, taking the next step, and then evolving as we move towards the larger goal, essentially. And so that's a meta answer. Just to simplify that particular bit, even if you look at, I was talking to a company, a startup again, from the legal domain. They have been using OpenAI's model, and they have fine-tuned that particular model on Indian context, Indian laws. And what's happening with that particular model, sometimes it actually hallucinates, and it creates a hybrid law, which is a combination of US and Indian law, and then starts suggesting which is something super weird. And that's very risky, especially in the domain say, for example, legal, or imagine something like this in banking sector, which is super regulated sector. So then obviously we need our own context, our own languages infused into these models, and fine-tuning won't work because many of these biases are just induced in the base model itself. And the only way to actually mitigate is figure out training these models from scratch, start from pre-training, work extensively on the data side of things when it comes to pre-training, build a very strong base model which is built on Indian languages and context, and then maybe we can have a lot more derivative models, one in banking, another one in finance, legal, hospitality, etc. So I think that's the path that we should essentially take going forward.
Got it. Thank you. Moving on, Rashmit, you are building a lot of in the AI space, which has directly impacted many farmers from in the insurance sectors and whatnot, right? So you are building actually AI for the scale, right? That what is needed. Tell us more about it. That what are your learnings that you wanted to share?
Definitely. Thanks, Yogesh. First of all, thank you for inviting for the panel. I could really relate with what Abhishek was saying, right? But it was more from the LLM context. But I'll give you the space side of things, right? Yeah. If you look at any satellite data, it's not like your normal imagery that you generally take from your camera phones. the information density is so high that humanly it's impossible to contextualize that information, understand what band corresponds to what shortwave infrared, how that feature would behave on the ground, etc. Right? That's the beauty of satellite data. Now, we have seen that from past 10 years, 15 years, I think COVID was the biggest checkpoint for us, where your climate cycle has changed tremendously. And satellite data provide you that ability to go back in history, right? And here you're talking about petabytes of data, which is really unstructured, as you rightly said. And doing that, there are scientific concepts called remote sensing and GIS, but that too, human was sitting on the front of a desktop and identifying what's happening and looking at the historic pattern. Now, how can I enable the machine to do that? My heavy lifting actually starts at the start, meaning my most of the time and effort gets to curate the data in a right way, right form, to make the data consumable to any AI/ML model. First, the magic happens there. And I think in our journey in last 7 years, we have moved away from that service to a product now. And our whole idea was that, yes, being a small team now, how can we empower the credit institutions like BFSI sector to make better decisions and solve the issues on the market linkages and financial inclusion problem. And to do that, I cannot put an army of people, right? Now I need machines to do it for me. And this is where the impact of how the solution that we have built has actually helped the BFSI sector, the banks, to make the better decision. Now the credit manager can sit in front of the system, identify the land parcel, and the information pops up in 5 seconds. And now petabytes of data that has been crunched using an AI/ML model. Now, if you ask me, are we using those conventional or have we built anything that is more from the classical side of things? I would say no. I think we had to also reinvent the wheel ourselves in terms of building those foundational models. But the need was more from internally, how we consume the data, how we provide value to the end customer. But I would say any of the off-the-shelf models that are available, more from open source, I think those are not applicable in our case. And for India to be there, right? The biggest challenge what we have seen in the space sector is that we don't have regulations, proper regulations and proper framework to work around with that data. Data is sitting in some silos. The ecosystems are not connected to each other. It's kind of broken, right? I think we are taking the right step, but it will take some time for us to get there. So unless this thing happens, which actually gives that jump start to any startup who really wants to just focus on building the model and solving the application, because I'm a firm believer, anything that you are doing an R&D has to land in a production. That's really important, and that has to be the end goal for anyone who is kind of starting in this space.
Thank you so much. I will be open for the audience if you have any questions. Anyone? I think someone at the end.
Sir, I'm so sorry. We'll get a mic to you, sir. Please wait just 1 minute. Can we, guys? A mic to sir there, please. Yes. A little quickly. Run like Phil Salt does. Yes, absolutely. Only the IPL watchers got that joke. Sir is standing there. Gentleman in blue shirt.
Thanks for your valuable inputs. One question here is, actually, we are planning to build India-specific models, base models, or any of those kind of things. But again, actually, what happens is, on one hand, I think the global models have the revenue or any of those kind of things to build as well as maintain those models, upgrade those models. But I think it's going to be much more challenge for us to maintain and upgrade models periodically. That, it's going to be a much bigger challenge. Because actually, I think it is because of the fact that peculiarity of our own indigenous models. What your comments on that?
So I can maybe take that up. So when we say that we are building Indic model, that does not mean that we are only going to train them on Indian languages. One of the missions that we are talking about India being a superpower, right? We cannot be a superpower unless we start comparing the technology or these models that we have built at the global level or at the SOTA level technically. So it's about bringing these Indian languages, Indian context, prioritizing them, setting maybe our kind of biases into these models, which are essential, very much important, but keeping that threshold at the SOTA level itself. And it's not about only we Indian consuming these models at the end of the day. Yes, it is very much true that India is not a very, very big market when it comes to deep tech, I would say. So definitely we have to look outwards. Looking outwards would mean that yes, you need to build something which the world would consume. Okay. That is the only direction that we essentially have to go. Once you have these tractions at the global level, automatically the incentivization to keep on updating the model, releasing new models automatically kicks in. So we need to figure out that business model, but that business model will only come when we reach the SOTA level. It could be in a particular vertical, could be possible, or it could be general, which is the foundation level bit. But yeah, we have to go beyond India, look beyond India, ask these people that, okay, India has built this model, you start consuming it because we are one of the best. I think it has to be that way.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
One more here.
Last question we'll take. Can we get the mic to sir here, please? Gentleman in black t-shirt. I think more closer to, anyway, he's here almost now.
Hi. With the recent turn of events, the whole world is going in a reverse globalization mode, and we are talking about converting India into an AI superpower, right? So while there are different aspects to it, my question is to Anup from an investment or capital perspective. As institutional investors, you raise your capital from a lot from maybe people from the US or institutions there, right? Is there a shift in that approach with what lies ahead, as in is the world, from a capital point of view, are you looking at raising more capital from internal, as an Indian funds or something of that sort? I mean, what's the change that you're seeing?
So just to give you a trend, I think definitely in the last 3 to 5 years, the appetite of the Indian family houses, business houses, individual retail investors towards private markets has only increased. So their contributions to most of the Indian funds has always been there. But specific to the global political climate that has sort of changed this dynamic, we don't see a long-term shift. We think this is a short period of normalization which will take some time. Definitely there is adjustment in the social capital which used to find its way to India. By that I mean, if there were some development financial institutions which had run global development campaigns, say for impact investing in, say, poverty or financial inclusion and a few things, I'm sure there is a mandate from the government treasuries of their respective governments to look more inward and to drive more policies inward a little bit. But if they are private organizations like these endowment funds, university funds, or fund of fund asset managers, I think in the medium to short long term, there is absolutely not going to be any impact. It's just a matter of a few months or maximum of a year until some of this normalizes.
Thank you so much. In the interest of time, sadly, we won't be able to take any more questions, but we request our moderator and our panelists to please do come forward towards the front of the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for our panelists and our moderator. What a wonderful, wonderful session. Anup Menon, Rashmit Singh Sukhmani, Rahul Pait, Abhishek Uparwal, and of course our moderator, Yogesh Lokhande. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for them once again.